What's up, guys? What's going on? I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology's daily devotional, and we are going through the book of John. We have moved into another chapter, and we're about to discuss a transitioning part of the scriptures into another person that Jesus knows the heart of. So we saw at the end of chapter 3, or the middle actually, it said that Jesus knows what's in the heart of man. Jesus knows man. And then, actually, that's at the end of chapter 2. I'm sorry. And then at chapter 3, we've seen a person, a certain man, and that was Nicodemus. And then now we're going to move into another person who is that Jesus knows the heart of. Jesus knows what's inside them. But we got to transition to that. Got to see why we get there and how we get there, because the person that he begins to speak to is quite different from the one that he spoke to earlier in Nicodemus. But anyway, don't want to spoil it for you, but you can read ahead if you want to. Anyway, again, we're in John chapter 4, verse 1 through 6. If you haven't read it yet, go ahead, stop the tape, see what it has to say, come back, and we'll answer the 4 questions. If you've already read it, man, we're going to go ahead and dive in. So the first thing that we always try and look at is what's actually going on. Well, Jesus apparently heard that the Pharisees knew that he was baptizing and gaining more disciples, that he was getting more disciples and baptizing more than John. And then they have like a little parenthetical statement that says, but it wasn't Jesus baptizing. So I think we talked a little bit about this in the last, I don't think it was the last episode, but it was a couple of episodes ago, about baptism and its importance. And it's cool here because we see that Jesus is not doing the baptism, but the disciples are. And so the disciples are agents of Jesus's work. Like Jesus places the work of doing the things that we're supposed to be doing in their hands, in the hands of the disciples. And that's important for us because it's what happens now, that God has commanded us and placed in us as the church, the body of believers, to be the hands and the feet of Jesus, that we carry out the duties of Christ upon the earth, the love, the care, the ministering, all of those things we do to glorify God, show others who he is, and narrate who the Father is, just as Jesus has done. We have the opportunity, and that's a blessed opportunity, man. It's difficult. Believe that. Believe that. It's hard. It ain't easy, man. My wife always trying to tell me sometimes you got that sign on the side of your van. You think you should be doing that? When in actuality, it is that, but it's because of the name that has been placed upon me as a believer. How should I be acting? And that is just a symbol of it in that sign on the side of my van. So, yeah, we are agents of Christ, instruments, as Paul calls us. And that's a beautiful and wonderful thing. That was just a little bit for you guys early on in the episode of some application and some truth. You know what I mean? So we can take that and move with it. But as we continue on, it says that because of this, Jesus left. He abandoned that place, man, and went into Galilee. And the reason that this is important is because it says that on the way to Galilee from Judea, you have to pass through Samaria. Now, there was another route that could be taken, and some believe that the Jewish people might have taken it because Samaria is hostile towards the Jewish people. So Samaritans and Jews, which we'll see earlier or later as we read, don't deal with each other. It is they are almost like mortal enemies, man. They are so against each other. There's a long history of Jewish people against Samaritan people. And this is because of the purity that the Jewish people believe they should have maintained and remained, while the Samaritans did not remain pure. The story starts, I guess, with the taking down of the northern kingdom. And when the northern kingdom was conquered, the ruler moved them to different places, exiled them to live in other places, but also brought in others to live in that place. And as both of those things occurred, then they began to marry and intermingle with these other people groups. And when they began to marry and intermingle with these other people groups, they began to compromise the Jewish faith, the worship of Yahweh, by instilling some of the pagan rituals, gods, and beliefs that were not part of Judaism. And then this continued on. And so as the southern kingdom was conquered, they remained pure. They kept their faith and tried not to intermarry. Therefore, they didn't adopt some of these other religious practices in with Judaism. Their faith remained pure. And so because of this, the Jewish people regarded Samaritans as like half-breed, idolatrous, blasphemous people. So they were just infinitely detestable to them. And so this will come to a full head when we begin to speak about the next person that Jesus says he knows what is in them. He understands who they are. And so this is a very, very important thing that John puts in there as he says that he had to pass through Samaria. Now, even this had to pass through Samaria is important because it could be taken in a couple of ways. And oftentimes, I guess from a guy, Josephus. Now, he's a writer from ancient times, like the historian who is Jewish. And he talks about this as well, about the route to Judea, to Galilee, where Samaria is there, and that there are two routes. And he says maybe the most common way would have been this passage, though others did take the long way just to avoid the detestable, in drop quotes, Samaritans. Now, again, I say this because this could be taken two ways. We know that John, as we've been reading a lot, uses phrases and words as double entendres, having dual meanings. And so it is necessary every time in the book of John. I'm sorry, not the book of John, but the Gospel of Jesus by John. It is necessary, the Greek term, that it is always used in a theological sense, as in a command from the Father that the Son has to carry out, or that the Pharisees believe must be done, all based on a theological note, except in this case, if it is necessary only because it is the way to Galilee from Judea. And so that's implications there to say that when John writes this, of course, it's necessary to go through Samaria because that's on the way, the path. But it also has a meaning in which it says that the Father has directed him to go to a place that normally the people of Jewish culture and heritage would not go. And so this is the thing that brings all of this, which we're going to talk about in the coming episodes, to a head, is the idea that the Father has a divine appointment set up for the Son to meet this person. And then after, we see also some background stuff. So if you followed me through Genesis, if you read with me through Genesis, especially at the end when the father, Isaac is, or I'm sorry, not Isaac, but Israel, Jacob is prophesying or blessing his children. And when it came to Joseph, it talked about an extra portion of land that was going to be given to him. And commentators and scholars believe that this probably is the thing in which he's talking about. This land that they're speaking of here is that extra land, extra portion that was given to Joseph by Isaac or by Jacob, Israel. Like this is it right here. And so it's pretty cool. It's going to have some bearing later on too in the conversation between Jesus and this person. But it's just cool to see how we read in one testament and then find reference to it of it being carried out in another. It's really cool. So if you've been following along with me with that, man, there's something for us to remember, take from what we had before, and we can see it playing out in real time in what we're reading today. But anyway, after that, it says that Jesus was tired, man, from his journey. And so he sat down upon a well at the 6th hour, which is probably noon, the hottest time of the day. And so this is important for us to see too, as well, as that Jesus was tired, that Jesus was weary from working, was being the energy was being zapped out of him from the sun. You know, I'm up in Washington right now because I'm trying to stay out of the heat, where I normally would reside if I wasn't living on the road full time doing this ministry. It's like 100 degrees down there. It is hot. And down there, whew, you can't go outside without being zapped. And so Jesus is in the same predicament. He's zapped from energy, being the hottest time of the day. He sits down, man. He's thirsty and he's hungry. And so he just sits down and rests. But I did read that the verb usage that John uses is not just sitting because he's tired, but also sitting and waiting for an expected meeting. And that's what we're going to see next. So what does this say? What does this say about God, this stuff that we read? Well, Jesus, though fully God, was also fully man. He was fully human. That some say that John wrote this in just to placate people on understanding the humanity that was in Jesus. But John, in this book and in First John, which we read, like, he makes it explicit the necessity for us to believe that Jesus was made in flesh, that Jesus came in the flesh, robed himself in flesh, that he was actually human, 100%. And this right here attests to that, the fact that Jesus was actually a human being. Though fully God, he robed himself in flesh. He dwelt among us. He was actually a human being, and he suffered the elements due to the fallen world. This weariness and tiredness was never meant to be, but it happened because of sin entering the world. And Jesus, man, God coming down and being in this fallen world just to save us shows more love, man. Who wants to subject themselves to being a part of a broken and busted up and destroyed world? Whew, I don't think I would want to, but Jesus did because he loved us that much. And then second, I think that Jesus always carries out the will of the Father. That phrase that I said, it is necessary, or he must. It is the idea that the Father is commanding this of the Son, but the Son willingly and gladly will do it, and he does it. He goes through this land, always doing the Father's will. What does this say about man? Is that we are agents of Jesus. I think this is awesome because as Christians, man, God has placed upon us his name so that we can reveal the world his greatness, his goodness, and his glory. And we get to be a part of that. We're the hands and feet of Jesus. And how do we apply these truths to our lives? Well, I think we've got to see, are we using the agency that God has given us to testify to the glory of God? Are we doing this in our lives? Because he has called us to. And then secondly, are we living out a life that follows the desires of the Father? Are we doing as Jesus did? It is necessary for us. Are we following the things that God has said? Hey, move this way. If Holy Spirit says, do this thing, are we acting upon it? And then finally, man, it's just rest in Jesus in every circumstance, in every heartbreak, in every joy, in every sadness, and every good thing that happens, because Jesus has lived it. Jesus was fully human and experienced all the things that we experience. And so if we have a struggle or a problem or a rejoicing and a goodness, then let's go to him, because he knows how we feel, because Jesus knows what's inside of man. And I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.